Hey, someone.
235. I will talk about that whenever you're ready.
I have a mobile order in for Norm.
What was the name?
Norm?
Okay, download that on your screen.
Yep.
Let him pull around.
Thank you. Hey, someone. Good to see you.
The Lackluster Channel. In March of 2024, Hendry and Ty saw a traffic stop and approached to film it.
Thank you. Immediately after giving the order, the subject of the traffic stop leaves, apparently walking. Officer was impounding his truck.
Wow, dude. You're a real. Stay 45 feet away from me. Is the stop still going? Is the stop still going? Nobody's in the car. Nobody's in that car.
Yeah, I know. By all means, it appears as though the traffic stop has concluded, but Hendry and Ty continue to stay back 25 feet. That's because a new law in Indiana.
Why is this not working?
That prohibits a person from knowingly and intentionally approaching within 25 feet of a law enforcement officer after the officer has ordered the person to stop. The law does not require that the officer be obstructed or that his duties be interfered with. Neither does it contain a standard to constrain how or when the prohibition is enforced. For example, if a drunk driver crashes into a tree on your front lawn, can an officer order you out of your home because it is within 25 feet of his investigation? The channel Freedom to, as the ACLU has filed a lawsuit on his behalf, arguing the constitutionality of the new code. A federal judge recently ruled against them, but the ACLU plans to appeal. The original language of the bill indicated that its intent was to allow an emergency incident area, but here we simply have an officer waiting for a tow truck to arrive, which makes it sound as though we're calling every police interaction an emergency, regardless of the purpose or their presence. The Indiana Sheriff's Association says that an officer needs to be able to focus on the people they're dealing with, and not the distractions. However, in this circumstance, the suspect was just allowed to leave.
I don't believe somebody in the passenger seat.
There he is, bro. I saw him.
You see him?
I did see him.
I don't know if it's a suspect though, or if it's another police officer.
Yeah.
It's hard to
Couldn't
tell.
tell. About 7 minutes after their arrival, Hendry retrieves a flashlight to see if anyone is still inside the truck. He uses the light to look into the truck for about 4 seconds. About a minute later, he activates the flashlight again, this time for 2.16 seconds.
Hey, Lucky, what up?
My name was.
I'm driving out to Cleveland. I gotta install 2 computers. I'm not gonna be there until like 7:30. Then I gotta install 2 computers. Then I gotta go check on the housing area. Figure out why they can't connect the phone.
Your mama should have smacked the shit out of you more often. Maybe she wouldn't raise such a bitch. Roll a spy!
The officer did end up forwarding his complaint to the prosecutor regarding the 2.16 seconds of flashlight use in the officer's direction, as well as being 21 feet from an officer waiting for a tow truck. As such, Hendry was charged with encroaching for the 4-foot difference and resisting law enforcement for the momentary blink of a flashlight. Resisting is a Class A misdemeanor, and Hendry happened to be out on bond for an incident I covered a while back.
Back up.
Dude,
Back
I'm
up.
trying to intimidate you, man. It doesn't really work on me.
Back out. Immediately shoot.
Dude, there's no law that would violation.
Yes, City Hall is closed. Read the signs out there.
I just read the ordinance. I just advised you that's not a law. Man, you guys could do yourself a favor and just go back and come with the mood on you, brother. Okay, brother? Like, you're just an American like I am. Well, I want you this country, but yeah, I'm fighting for this country too. Again, people like you. Against, dude, do not touch my stuff.
I can't if I want to.
Hey, no, bro, you can't touch my stuff. That's no vandalism. So now you're getting a vandalization charge.
Oh, please do.
Yeah, you are, brother. You are.
Please do.
Absolutely.
To view that story, use the links below. But because he was out on bond for what was discussed in that video,
Oh, the lackluster video? Yeah.
and Hendry spent the next 13 days in jail. After his release, he submitted a motion to dismiss the resisting charge, filing pro se, or on behalf of himself and without legal representation. In his motion, he claims that the bond revocation was purposeful and malicious. He then points out that the code states that a person must forcibly resist, obstruct, or interfere, with emphasis that the word forcibly implies that a physical act must be attributed to resisting, obstructing, or interfering. The prosecutor claimed that pointing an activated flashlight in the direction of an officer is the physical act, but that the commas between resist, obstruct, and interfere separates the adverb forcibly, and that it only applied to the verb resist. Hendry knew this was a false and misleading claim. As in the case of Spangler v. State, Mr. Spangler was arrested and charged with resisting for simply refusing to accept a temporary protective order, as it was being served to him by a sheriff's deputy. The Indiana Supreme Court held in that case that forcibly modifies the entire string of verbs in that particular section of the state due to the placement of the adverb before the string of verbs in that particular clause. Hendry continued, arguing that using a flashlight for its intended purpose does not constitute a use of force, and that no physical contact was made. The prosecutor responded to Hendry's motion, acknowledging the failure, but also arguing that when a flashlight obstructs the vision of an officer, it could be construed as a threatening gesture or movement, or otherwise presents an imminent.
The City of Hobart Court, they looked over a few different pieces of case law. They looked over Spangler. Looks like they looked over Johnson versus State, Guthrie versus I'm deciding whether the guy was even in his public capacity. He was working with a private place in Southern Streets. And the courts were really having a hard time deciphering between whether the guy was working in a private capacity or whether the guy was working in a public capacity. But not only that, the differences don't stop there. I believe that there was a bit of a violent element to this case. It's just not, it's a civil case. There's a whole bunch of differences between it. Trying to equate the two is it's an extremely far stretch from what the defense can say. But this is a quote from the case law, City of Hobart. Quote, even viewing the evidence in light most favorably to the itself into an ongoing arrest with his limbs, which is not passive at all. To this court, plaintiff's behavior is more like the subjects in Guthrie and Johnson because he interfered in a meaningful way that extended beyond mere passive resistance. Accordingly, the court finds that plaintiff's conduct satisfied the Indiana resistance rule, supplying the underlying offense necessary to support the finding that Officer Viator possessed probable cause to effectuate plaintiff's arrest and detention. And of course, the reason the court is even mentioning, probable cause and all this stuff is because this case is a civil matter, and the defendants in the case were filing for a motion for summary judgment. It's a totally different type of case. But on top of that, in every single case referenced by the prosecution, with regards to City of Hobart, all the case law connected to it. Every single case, the person subjected to the statute used their limbs and body in a meaningful way that resulted in an obstruction or interference with the officers carrying out of their duties. In the case at hand, the one captioned State of Indiana, interjecting limbs or body parts between the officer and a subject or a person or item that is a subject of an officer's investigation. We don't even have the officer at hand, Mr. Van Horn, in the midst of an investigation. He is waiting on a tow truck, and as far as being on a roadway like the officer was, he can expect to be hit with various different headlights all the time, ranging from 700 lumens to 3,000 lumens as is allowed by federal regulations in the United States. Further indicating that far from an abnormal interference or obstruction to his duty, the flashlight that defense shown at the officer was actually fairly normal and insignificant. The prosecution goes so far to admit that one of the major differences between the current case and the City of Hobart is that in the City of Hobart, the offender used his, quote, physical body, unquote, furthering the defense's point that no forcible element exists while using a tool that emits photons. Photons, Your Honor, it is well known in the scientific community that photons do not contain any mass. In order to commit a forcible element, kinetic energy is required. It's impossible to get kinetic energy if you don't have mass. So in order to be forcible, you actually have to have something that is capable of inflicting some kinetic energy on another object. Of course, light doesn't do that. Even with light, it inflict any kinetic energy. In paragraph 8, now we'll move on to paragraph 8 of the state's response. The state makes a ridiculous claim when he says that locking a door in order to prevent an officer from entering the vehicle, which is a lawful button. And I want to make it clear that in the case that the state references where they try to equate a pushing of a button and a car door to a pushing of a button and a flashlight. The car door is a barrier, Your Honor. The car door is a physical barrier between a police officer and a subject of investigation. But if a police officer has a lawful duty to actually enter a vehicle and effect an arrest on a subject of investigation, then locking that door, that barrier, creates an inconvenience. But it doesn't have anything. It doesn't have any relation to this pressing of a button to lock the car door. By the way, there were other factors, and the state admits that as well. There were other factors in that case as well that makes it reasonable to conclude that the guy was obstructing or interfering in that case. Then I'll move on in paragraph 9 of the state's response. The state makes yet another highly irrelevant point by claiming that being exposed to a bit of light might pose a risk to an officer. While hypothetically anything could have happened, the defense would ask the court only to consider the reality of the situation and the facts at hand. The reality is that no threat was posed to Officer Van Horn by the defense. I actually have some statistics, Your Honor, and should it please the court, I would like to comment on them verbally, but then at a later date I'd like to reserve the right to enter into the record these statistics in their physical form on a piece of paper so that the statistics, validity of them has not been mentioned yet, because the source hasn't been mentioned yet. The source is actually the government. It is the PBS.org News Hour. That publisher is actually a government publisher, which I think lends a little bit more credence to them in a government court. So, while the state might object, I would ask that the court reserve the rule on that objection until it has actually seen the source of the materials that I'm willing to provide. The validity cannot be tested to, or it can't be shown to be incredulous. If the C3 or a nonprofit organization that has been created to bring awareness to police officers and the dangers that they are exposed to every day in their job. And what they've done is they've compiled statistics on officer deaths. Between the years of 2014 and 2023, there were a total of 2,519 officer deaths. And Your Honor, what I've done is, from this same website, I've taken statistics compiled from 1980 to 2018. I've taken all of the police deaths. I've compiled a statistic average for how many police deaths are caused by shootings, which is the only statistic here that would imply that somebody else, another person, caused the death. And I have taken that percentage and I have applied it to the deaths from 1980 to 2018. I've gotten a statistic that about 21% of police officers that have died during those times. How many members of the public shot them? The defense only knows that 1,500 police officers as a whole number were killed on average from about 1980 to 2018. So the defense's point in sharing this is to make clear that if anybody was in danger during the times in question, it was the defense. As PBS, the publication that I mentioned before, estimated that from 1980 to 2018, the same amount of time that the 1,500 police officers were killed from being shot, about 30,000 citizens, members of the public, were killed extrajudicially by the state. It could be seen as executions or killings or unfortunate events. But in any matter, 30,000 U.S. citizens were killed with police violence, and 1,500 police officers were killed during that same time frame from being shot. According to the statistics I've compiled, a U.S. citizen is 20 times more likely to be shot or killed through the use of police violence than a police officer is likely to be shot, only shot, and killed by the public. Now, so the 20 times comes from taking 30,000 divided by 1,500, you get the number of 20. But that's just some statistics I would like the court to of the official, unquote. That's Spangler versus State. And this requirement applies whether force is based on physical contact or a threat of strength, power, or violence. Now that "or" is very important. This requirement applies when or a threat of violence, power, or force. Strength, power, or violence. Sorry. That would imply is that there are two ways that something could be considered force. The first thing, that there has to be force, and action must be made in the direction of the official, or it has to constitute a threat of strength, power, or violence. Nothing that has happened in this case meets either of those requirements at all. This requirement applies whether force is based on physical contact or a threat of strength, power, or violence. This requirement, it's a requirement, it is a requirement that for force to be, that for something to be interpreted as force, it has to be based on physical contact. That didn't happen in this case. The state doesn't contend that happened in this case. The state maintains that the only physical contact that the defense made with anybody is the physical contact that the defense made with his flashlight when he pressed a button. But then, so then we go to or. What else would be required? Because that clearly doesn't mean the requirements. There's no physical contact. So then we go to or a threat of strength, power, or violence. And I ask the state, where is the threat of power, strength, or violence from the defendant? And of course, in hindsight, it's always easy to say, oh yeah, something could have happened. Your Honor, anything could happen. When I stepped into my vehicle this morning to come to court, I took a risk. risk that I might get hit by a car. Anything can happen. Of course, the risk is always that something can happen. But we have to look at what reality is. What really happened? Nothing happened. This is the only thing that happened. It's something we've got to finish. And now, ultimately, because there's a personal vendetta against me in this county, which has been proven by the prosecution, been proven by the prosecution. Jared Holtzclaw has written up a opinion about me just on his own, completely on his own, on a completely unrelated matter, saying that what I do on a regular basis amounts to really aggravating public officials. Shining a flashlight, recording public officials with video and audio recording device, it's been ruled by the 7th District Court of the United States to be a constitutionally protected activity. Now, converting a constitutionally protected activity into a crime is because public officials may find behavior aggravating. It seems that we have lost what it means to be an American. That because you might aggravate a public official, because you might annoy a public official, and Your Honor, I don't contend that I'm not annoying. The defense does not contend that he is not, maybe a bit annoying to most people. It's all a matter of subjective opinion. The state here is charged with 3 offenses in this court. We've got Class A misdemeanor resisting law enforcement. We've got a Class B misdemeanor false informant. We've got a Class C misdemeanor encroachment. The only charge that the defense contends that 0 probable cause exists, and I say 0 because I mean 0, was this resisting law enforcement. But damages have been sustained by the defense simply because it was charged to me so frivolously. The other court basically viewed it in the light most favorable to the state, as I can have this too. I was forced to sit for 11 days in the county jail, in Vermillion County Jail, as a result of this charge being brought against me, when no forcible element was person to have existed in this case. So I guess with that, I'll wrap it up. I just wanted to make it very clear that the defense suffered exorbitant damages as a result of this. The defense still suffers damages. Writing up this stuff is not an easy or simple thing to do, as I'm sure the court knows. So, with that being said, thank you very much for hearing me, Your Honor. I would like to deliver 4 separate pieces of case law to the court. These words. I do not have a copy for him. I just intended to enter these into the record, and then the prosecutor can pick up a copy from the court.
The judge actually never ruled on the state's first motion to revoke bond, which was based on the Class A misdemeanor. The Vermillion County Court only ruled on the state's second motion, which only referenced the Class C misdemeanor, which is not the reason that we're here today. So that is a non-issue as far as the state's concerned. The defendant also frankly misstated the law. The case law is clear that there's no requirement of physical contact, and I think that is in double check just so I don't misspeak here. Well, City of Hobart indicates that, and specifically, I finally found it, Walker versus State, which is 99 Northeast 2nd. In a Supreme Court case, held that the Supreme Court has never held that actual physical contact between the defendant and an officer is required to sustain a conviction for assisting law enforcement. Excuse me. Was using is the Spangler definition, I believe. The court goes.
It is beautiful.
On to say that the line after Spangler, the court goes on to say in Marcy versus State that the definition of forcibly, and I would contend forcible as well, has been slightly softened since Spangler was decided. And the line between what is and is not forcible resistance is blurry to say the least. So the contention by the defense that there's a hardline rule on what force is and what it is not is simply untrue.
physical contact required. Mr. Brent Seymour made the claim that I made the claim that physical contact is required. I did not make that claim. I made the claim that completely skipped over that. Forcible, while there may be a case that says that the definition has been slightly softened, the definition has been reinforced time and time and time again. Go back to my point. Physical contact required or strength, violence, and power. I believe that's the Walker. I believe it's also the Pope. So I don't know exactly what the state is getting at when he keeps belaboring that point. Then the state goes on to talk about laser beams. I don't know where I get a laser beam capable of, I don't know. I've never personally seen one. But either way, I think that we're talking at this point kind of about some Star Wars stuff, some Star Trek kind of stuff. We're not dealing in the realms of reality here, and that's something that I would encourage the court to operate in use of language. Maybe if I did have something that could, burn through, I don't know, like a Starship Destroyer or something, whatever they have in Star Wars. Maybe if I did have a light like this, but again, we're dealing with the realms of sci-fi with science fiction. I don't know exactly what he's talking about. And then when he talks about there's laws for airplanes, well, there may be a law for an airplane. But of course, we aren't dealing with an airplane today. And then when he says that I injected myself, it's just an outright lie, Your Honor. It's an outright lie. At the beginning of the interaction between defense and the state's witness, Ryan Van Horn, at the beginning of this interaction, Mr. Van Horn injected himself into Mr. Henry's activities. And I was standing there when Mr. Van Horn said, hey, start barking orders at me. I said, sir, do your job, please. So focus on what you're doing. So the idea that I injected myself is, I think that's just, for lack of a better term, it's ridiculous, Your Honor. And I was not the subject of the investigation, but I restate the point that the subject of the investigation was gone. The subject of the investigation was absent. There's nothing to interfere with. So I think that, and I wonder why the state didn't bring that up as well. The subject of the investigation, well, it wasn't me. It wasn't even present. So I do wonder why the state didn't bring it up. But, Your Honor, I think that at this point I've made all the points that I can. Of course, I am a layman, but I think that's about it for me, Your Honor. Thank you.
After representing himself in court, the parties were given 30 days to file any additional briefings for the court to consider, and after that, the court would take the matter under advisement. Then, after another 30-day period, the court would deliver a ruling. However, because this audio surfaced on the internet, the court ordered Hendry to appear. The document essentially wants Hendry to appear in court and prove his innocence, and if he doesn't, they could file to have him charged. That court date is in early August, so for updates on what's happening in this case, be sure to check out Hendry's channel, and I'll do my best to provide updates as well. Use the links below for any of the videos mentioned previously, and to check out Hendry's channel. And if you like this video...
That's nuts. Judge's butthurt that the audio recording got out. So now he's got to prove he didn't do it. It's crazy. And I'm late for Robert Gouveia, because I wanted to hear the end of that.
All of them were thinking in their heads that, the miscomments that the psychopathic left were screaming about. Delaware. This is what we're going to get. Oh, we're committed to getting to the bottom of what happened. I'm grateful we're distinguished members who's committed. Yeah, right. The president announced on J14 that this administration is committed to sharing these results with the American people. And it's all bipartisan. They are not at all bipartisan at all. Okay, so some are Republicans, some are Democrats, but they all equally hate Trump. They're bipartisan in their hatred of Trump, that's for sure. So here is what Julia posted for us. Got this clip back in April of Janet Napolitano showing up on MSNBC's hit show that they love there, #1, called Inside Jen Psaki. And here's a conversation about Trump. Here's Janet Napolitano, who's going to be on this committee.
So, first of all, for former President Trump to run as a so-called law and order candidate, it would be like me saying I play in the NBA. I mean, it just doesn't hold true. Yeah. So, look, there was a terrific spike in violent crime, really during the end of the Trump presidency when we were in the midst of the COVID pandemic. But since then, crime has been
BLM riots.
Dramatically so. Last year, 2023 saw the largest one-year decrease in violent crime nationwide than we've had since around 1960. And so, to say that we are
decrease in reporting of crimes,
it's going up, et cetera, et cetera. Look, never let the facts get in the way of rhetoric, I guess, but the facts are the facts.
All right, so Trump is responsible for the increase in violence, and the rhetoric is dangerous, right? So one of these people who are just going to be on this committee looking at this from their perspective, that the institution, remember, these people are institutionalists, which is why they hate Trump so much. Trump is not an institutionalist. They think he's going to come in like a wrecking ball and wreck what they have been working towards their whole life, right? These people have been in the government forever. It's like a weird kinship. It's like an extension of themselves, like a third limb or something like that. They cannot move on. 29 years, 35 years, it's never ending. So then they come in and they're going to protect the institutions of the Secret Service, of the DOJ, of the FBI. No one's going to be held accountable for this. It's all the deep state acolytes, one after another, being lined up here. And then they're going to go through this and say, no, just a random lone shooter. Nope, nothing to see here. And of course, we know where it's going to go. So Mike Johnson is doing the same thing. They're creating another committee. And I don't think that this is going to go the same way that the J6 committee went. We know how that went. They passed H.R. 503 in their House rules. They said that they were going to create a J6 committee to investigate J6. And then what they did is they kicked off all the Republicans that the minority party nominated. So they wanted Jim Jordan on there and many other great people to be on the committee. Nancy Pelosi said no. So she threw them off and then appointed 2 Republicans who weren't even really Republicans. So now we're asking ourselves, is Mike Johnson going to do that same thing? Like, is he going to appoint 6, say, hey, you can have, because they had 13 here. It was supposed to be 13 for the Republicans. 13 on the J6 committee, 8 Democrats, 5 Republicans. Remember that we did not have that. We had 7 Democrats and 2 Republicans in violation of their own rules. So now, because the House is more evenly split, Johnson says, I guess I'll give you guys 6 seats. 6 seats for this. Now, hopefully he only allows like 1 or 2 and he throws the rest of them off, and then the media can just eat it, because that's exactly what Liz Cheney and Nancy Pelosi did. But I probably won't do that because they're Republicans. But here's what Johnson says. He says the security failures that allowed an assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life are shocking. And in response, Representative Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, and I are announcing a House task force made up of 7 Republicans and 6 Democrats to thoroughly investigate the matter. Now, the task force will be empowered with subpoena authority and will move quickly to find the facts, ensure accountability, and make certain such failures never happen again. Now, talk about a task force that I'd like to be on. Yeah, that'd be a fun one to be on. But we'll see who gets on it, what Democrats are on there. It'll probably be a bunch of bomb throwers from both sides. We'll see if they actually get to the facts of anything. But again, Johnson will actually play by the rules. Nancy Pelosi didn't. Benny Thompson didn't. Liz Cheney didn't, because they're hacks and cheaters, as always. But Johnson was talking about this. Here was his reaction to the resignation of Cheadle. He posted this on X. He says, Director Cheadle finally answered our calls to resign. Good. Now our task force will quickly and thoroughly investigate the assassination attempt on President Trump and hold those responsible accountable. Here is the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
Our reaction, the immediate reaction to her resignation, is that it is overdue. She should have done this at least a week ago. I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see that she has heeded the call of both Republicans and Democrats. Now we have to pick up the pieces. We have to rebuild the American people's faith and trust in the Secret Service as an agency. It has an incredibly important responsibility in protecting presidents, former presidents, and other officials in the executive branch, and we've got a lot of work to do. The task force that we'll be putting together is going to be very important. As I said, they have 3 responsibilities: to investigate what happened, the debacle that happened 2 Saturdays ago, to hold those accountable. It certainly was the director, Cheadle, but there may be others in the line of authority who are also culpable in what happened and the errors and mistakes there. And finally, to ensure that those mistakes do not happen again. The stakes are too high. It's a very dangerous time. We need the Secret Service to be acting, to be performing at the top of their game. And we'll ensure that that happens. I hope that the interim director or whomever is appointed to replace Director Cheadle will be very sober-minded about the responsibility and take into account the very dangerous times in which we live. We'll do everything we can in the House to ensure that that's true. And I think our task force's work just got even more important.
All right, so it sounds like it's a task force. I don't know how that's different than a select committee or whatever. But here is what the Oversight Committee has said. So I guess it's not really a committee. It's like a task force, different rules, but it has subpoena power, just like Liz Cheney had. So, all right. Here's what Oversight says. Comer writes, the Oversight Committee's hearing resulted in Director Cheadle's resignation, and there will be more accountability to come. We hope so. The Secret Service has a no-fail mission, yet it failed historically on Director Cheadle's watch. At yesterday's Oversight Committee hearing, Cheadle instilled no confidence that she has the ability to ensure the Secret Service can meet its protective mission. Egregious security failures leading up to and at the Butler, Pennsylvania campaign rally resulted in the assassination attempt of President Trump, the murder of an innocent victim, and harm to others in the crowd. While Director Cheadle's resignation is a step toward accountability, we need a full review of how these security failures happen so that we can prevent them going forward. We will continue our oversight of the Secret Service in support of the House Task Force to deliver transparency, accountability, and solutions to ensure this never happens again. All right, so that's Oversight and James Comer in response. Someone else who's got reaction to this is Jim Jordan. You know, he's on the Judiciary Committee, and he got asked about this over on Fox, along with some other items about the Biden exit and Kamala Harris. So let's listen to what Jordan said. Here is the chairman of the Judiciary Committee in the House.
Come back to the Secret Service investigation and what happened on January the 13th, because we heard from the president a little while ago as he makes his way back to the White House on Kim Cheadle resigning. He said, Jill and I are grateful to Director Kim Cheadle for her decades of public service. She has selflessly dedicated and risked her life to protect our nation throughout her career in the United States Secret Service. We especially thank her for answering the call to lead the Secret Service during our investigation. We are grateful for her service to our family. This proves once again, Congressman, Mr. Chairman, that nobody gets fired in the Biden administration.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. That's the nature of this administration. I mean, when the border czar is now their candidate for president, and we have the situation we've had on our border for 3.5 years, literally no border. I guess that's just the way this administration operates. Again, I think it's important that we, as I said, the before, the during, and the after. But this after, where they told us things that were not true. When they said it was absolutely false that President Trump's security detail asked for help and was denied that. And Mayorkas said it's unequivocally false, that statement. And then 5 days later they said, well, oh, by the way, there were instances where we did turn down requests from President Trump's security detail. It can't be both. You were lying to us when you told us that just days after an assassination attempt on the former president. That to me is a real problem, and why so many Americans have concerns about our agencies and institutions and our government.
You know, to circle back on the news just there, these two top Democrats now endorsing Kamala Harris, there seems to be momentum, there seems to be money, there seems to be some growing enthusiasm. You just said, I don't care who they put up, you do believe that Donald Trump will win, Congressman. Are Republicans underestimating her ability and Democrats' ability to pull this off?
No, I learned a long time ago in athletics, you go hard all the way to the end of the match, into the game. So
champ
We got
wrestler,
great
Jim
Senate
Jordan.
candidates and bring your family out to dinner. Go out to dinner and see what it costs just to take your family out
It's
on
crazy.
Friday night for a dinner. It costs an arm and a leg, so everyone knows what's going on. And then there's, of course, this leadership that projecting strength from the Oval Office that we
Defeat after another for them. Everything they touch turns to garbage. Inflation's 30% plus. We all feel it. Turkey sandwich and a bag of chips is $25. Families are feeling it across the board. We expect them to do the bare minimum, parroting all of this. And so we'll keep covering this. We know that these fake committees will be doing a bunch of subpoenas will be coming out. There'll be a bunch of letters that'll be flying around. We'll see who gets on the committees and what they start doing. And so thank you for subscribing, my friends, and joining us as we continue this journey. We'd love it if you'd invite someone you know or love who might enjoy the content to come check out our channel. You know, YouTube doesn't boost us at all. And so we appreciate your invites. We'll look forward to seeing you and your friends back here on the next one. But we're not done yet, because this is live, baby. We've got a whole nother story here. So let's get to it, because this is also very interesting. The Trump assassin made some very interesting trips, some of those to Washington, D.C. New reports from the Oversight Project, you know them on X, have done geo-targeting and followed him around to various states and locations. We're going to go through that. And there's a new report from Just the News that says that he also was using multiple encrypted apps and had multiple connections, the shooter, to various other foreign countries. We wonder what that's all about. Johnson has released the number of shell casings found near the body, and other congresspeople, including this 70-year-old man, show us how to walk on a sloped roof. You're not going to believe how he does it. Wait until we see it. But first, we have this new report from the Oversight Project. They are on X at Oversight PR, and they have been doing some outstanding work and reporting. So make sure you're following them. And we are reposting this right now. If you're following along at home, you'll see it at the top of our timeline. Here is what they dropped. It says, we found the assassin's connections through our in-depth analysis of mobile ad data to track movements of Crooks and his associates. And this is something that actually happens. So you can purchase search data in bulk and aggregate. You can search for geo-data, different devices, pinging off stores, pinging off different locations. It's all out there. You just have to know how to find it, buy it, and then utilize it. So they've done this. They went through probably some ad network, mobile ad data, and they're tracking the movement of Crooks and his associates. Now, to do this, we tracked devices that regularly visited both Crooks' home and his place of work, and we followed them. So you can see how they're doing this. To use a Kamala tool, Venn diagrams. There's a bunch of different devices that visited this address. There's a bunch of different devices that visited the work address. So if we overlap those, are there any in between that visited both? Probably Crooks. So they've done that. And here's what they found. Someone who regularly visited Crooks' home and his work, maybe it was Crooks or someone else, also visited a building in Washington, D.C. in Gallery Place. This is the same vicinity of an FBI office that was there on June 26, 2023. Oh, whose device is this? You see the Smithsonian's right here, and these two little Gallery Place and this other circle. Buildings all over the place. Very curious. Now, another device, so they found probably a different device, is linking. So those two things in that Venn diagram. Visited Plymouth, Massachusetts. So here's how the International Airport, and he's being pinged, right? Hit him with the Starbucks ad. Hit him with a whatever is in airports. You know, hit him with this ad. Hit him with this. You know how Facebook knows everything about you. It's because it knows where you are. So then from Pittsburgh, he goes to Boston on March 1st. He's hanging out all over Boston. He hops on this line. You can see him pinging over here to Plymouth. March 1st, he hops on this, takes an Uber down here to Plymouth. Then Hotel 1620 Plymouth Harbor. He's at the hotel for 3 days. Then he goes back over to Boston Airport, March 3rd, and then back over home to Pittsburgh International, back on March 3rd. Was I saying May? It's March. All the dates are March. Reading is hard. So, you can see. Interesting. Why is he traveling around from Plymouth to Boston? What was that for? March 1st. Visiting family? Something explainable? Something benign? Don't know. We found a device linked to Crooks' work that also traveled to Butler, Pennsylvania, also on July 4th and July 8th. But after that, device was gone. Oh. Now, we need to know when the actual rally was scheduled. So does he get notice? He gets his phone. He says, oh, this is it. I'm going to go take him out. Then that device is gone, right? He says, they probably tracked this one, so he burns that. Found a device linked to Crooks' work. Goes and scopes the site. On August 30th last year, one device linked to Crooks visited Allegheny Arms, right? This could even be dad. You could think about parents. The parents could be in this center of this Venn diagram. Because they might go visit the son at work. It's a work party, or they're going to pick up their kid or whatever. So maybe this was when dad purchased the gun. Don't really know. Now here's all the relevant locations within Bethel Park that are linked to both Crooks' home and his place of work. So those same devices hit all these locations. Work location was here, home location was over here, a bunch of pings. Also at the Allegheny Arms and Gun Works. Then a bunch of other stops. Tang Sudo Karate could be here. Could be at a laundromat. Flora Park Center, another ping. South Park Golf Course, maybe golfing. This was near Redacted. Don't know what that is. This is near Redacted. Planet Fitness. We also saw high school, YMCA, school district. Could be also near these other locations, right? We don't know exactly what those are. It looks like they redacted those. But for those who are tracking this type of data, here's what they done. They said, we've identified devices that were located at Crooks' home and his work within the past year. We are willing connective tissue between that entity, the FBI, the Secret Service, and other entities. And so for those of you who may have information, if you have leads, if you have them, very interesting report and interesting connections traveling around. Now they have this cell phone from him. And so presumably they're going to also know all of this, and they're going to tell us what he was doing or what somebody was doing in Washington, D.C. Very strange. Someone who regularly visited Crooks' home and work also visited D.C. Interesting. Probably just wanting to learn a little bit about American history. Go visit the White House. Yeah, all right. So that is from the Oversight Project. We also have questions about the ties to foreign entities and the use of encrypted apps. Just the News had this breaking story. It says, while Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle shoved her nose up at the congressional people, the FBI has now disclosed to Congress that the shooter used 3 encrypted communications apps ostensibly tied to Germany. And also possessed an arrest photo of another Michigan school shooter, the Crumb. Means that the apps are founded in these locations, like these are German apps or Brussels apps or New Zealand apps, or if he's talking to people. Now, in multiple briefings, FBI leaders told lawmakers that the 20-year-old assassin's his primary cell phone has become an important focal point of the probe, including 14,000 images that were found on it. Of what? According to multiple people. The FBI has not given us an update since J14. Now, the phone included an arrest photo and other information of Ethan Crumbley. Remember that? That was the terrible school shooting where both parents even got convicted because they were just like, yeah, go shoot him. Yeah, whatever. Who was convicted in the dead shot of the rally. One of the most tantalizing pieces of evidence from the phone, according to the sources, was 3 foreign encrypted platforms used by crooks that were apparently based in Germany, New Zealand, and Belgium. So the apps are not domestic apps. The encryption on the apps poses a significant challenge. The FBI's closed-door briefings also provided a far more detailed timeline about the events than Cheadle ever offered, including that the Secret Service first conducted a site survey at the Butler event on July 8th. That included the AGR building. The survey was 5 days before the event and resulted in a security plan that relied on 3 concentric rings of security around the podium. Crooks visited Butler Farms twice before the shooting, once on J 7th and again at 10:30 in the morning. He returned, he's like, oh, this is easy, there is no security here. Goes, gets his gun, bought some ammo. I can shoot him here, no problem. The FBI also, he's like, there's nobody here. The FBI also, or he says, oh yeah, perfect, they're opening the window for me. The FBI also told lawmakers that the Secret Service, he doesn't even have to know that, right, in order for the Secret Service to be complicit. He doesn't have to know that there's a window opened. There just needs to be a window opened. At 5:51 on J13, early, about a suspicious person at the speaking venue. Information was relayed 1 minute later to the Secret Service team and to agents on the ground. That means Secret Service had at least 9 minutes warning before Trump even came out and began speaking, and 20 minutes before crooks began shooting. Those numbers are just devastating. That is like, come on, dude. 9 minutes? 1 minute before the first shots were fired, the Secret Service sniper was alerted. Oh no! Was alerted that there was a local police incident at the 3 p.m. position where Trump was speaking. Must have been the guy who fell off the roof. One of the Trump's detail agents began inquiring what was going on just before the first shot was fired. FBI said evidence that its agents recovered from Crooks' body or nearby after a counter sniper killed him included the AR-15 rifle, a remote transmitter, a receipt from Home Depot, his primary cell phone. The Bureau told lawmakers that evidence seized from his vehicle in the parking lot at Butler included 14 additional weapons, 1 explosive device, a secondary cell phone, a laptop and a hard drive, and 3 USB devices. Agents said the most startling find thus far has been the complete absence of evidence revealing any political or ideological motive for the shooting. What could it be? I know a lot of people say he was a Trump fan. No, he's a Trump fan. Oh, so he wanted to go shoot him in the head? Is that what happened? A lot of fans do? On his laptop, Crooks visited websites about building explosives and left a message in an online gaming platform where it might be disputed or still in flux. But, yep. What was on that phone? Who was he talking to? Why were these encrypted on non-domestic apps? Very curious. Now, we also about what happened on J13, the attack on American democracy that was allowed by the Secret Service under the Biden administration. Says Senator Ron Johnson posted this. He says, since I released my preliminary findings on Sunday, and we read through all of that in a prior segment, if you missed it, I'd encourage you to watch it, says we've continued to investigate. He says 2 witnesses now confirm seeing 8 shell casings near Crooks' body. Cheadle knew that, but she refused to share it with the American people. So here's what Johnson wrote. He says, here's the preliminary findings continued. We've already read through the full brief yesterday. It says on Sunday, July 21st, Senator Johnson released preliminary findings based on conversations and information obtained by his office following J13, the assassination attack on Trump. The senator's office has continued to speak with witnesses and is appreciative of the individuals who have come forward to share what they saw and experienced. On J22, during testimony before the House Oversight Committee, Kimberly Cheadle then refused to answer questions about the number of shell casings found near the body of the would-be assassin Crooks. Although Cheadle confirmed the FBI told her how many shell casings were on the roof. She withheld the specific numbers from lawmakers due to the FBI's ongoing investigation. Now today, July 23rd, in testimony before the House Homeland Security Committee, Christopher Paris, the commissioner of the Pennsylvania State Police, was asked how many rounds Crooks fired before he was killed. Commissioner Paris responded, "I believe the number is 8. 8 casings have been recovered." And that is from the hearing. Says the testimony is consistent with eyewitness information that Senator Johnson's office has received to date. And so he updates this. Multiple law enforcement officials report 8 shell casings found near Crooks' body. At least 3 local law enforcement officials reported to Senator Johnson's office that there were 8 shell casings located near Crooks' body. So that would make those 8 shots his. 2 of these individuals saw the shell casings firsthand. The 3rd individual told Johnson's office that the FBI informed him that there were 8 shell casings found on the roof. So Johnson's releasing this material, even though it's preliminary, to ensure transparency and keep the public well informed. That's from Johnson. So remember, we didn't know who that second set of 5 shots came from. We heard it. It sounded different. We heard pop, pop, pop. First 3. We thought those were from Crooks clearly. Then we heard pop, 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 pop. It sounded differently. Then we heard a wait, pop. And that was theoretically the counter sniper taking Crooks out. That second batch of 5, where did those come from? Sounds like it came from Crooks. Or somebody threw some shells up there. I don't know. Either way. 8 were found by the body. And it sounds like that's pretty well documented. 3 people at least have said that. The audio, there's definitely 8 in that first batch. There's 3, then 5. So that reporting is interesting. We also had this exchange. Johnson showed up with Human Events and Jack Posobiec, shout out to that team, and had this exchange. He says, it's all preliminary. We really don't know a lot about this, but we have to tell you what we're finding. Here's Ron Johnson.
My investigators were very reluctant to issue preliminary findings because, again, it is so incomplete. It's so preliminary. But these are all things that we were told by local law enforcement. I think that's the key. We reached out immediately to local and federal law enforcement, and people started talking to us. And so we memorialize all these things while it's fresh. And seeing when I saw how much the federal officials were just not being transparent. And of course, you had in our Senate briefing on Wednesday, both the FBI and the Secret Service director saying, boy, we don't want these conspiracy theories to take hold. Well, if you don't want that to happen, tell the American people what you know.
Exactly.
I think people realize it's incomplete. It's very early in the process. They'll cut you some slack on that. So I'm hoping people will cut us some slack on how incomplete and preliminary our findings were. And if information changes, I'll provide it. That's one of the reasons I'm saying now that we've had confirmation, eyewitness account, that there were 8 shells, maybe that will lay to rest the concerns that there's another shooter. Again, even that's preliminary, but it's so important to be conducting the investigation now, and it's so important to have an independent investigation because, unfortunately, and this is sad, we can't trust the Secret Service and the FBI. We just can't do it. Look what the FBI did with the Russian collusion hoax. They knew that was a dirty trick by the Hillary Clinton campaign. They knew that the source of the Steele dossier was something they were investigating as a Russian spy, and yet they allowed the Mueller committee, the special counsel, to be set up and put America through political turmoil that hasn't ended to this day. So, unfortunately, the higher-ups in the FBI is corrupt. I think the Department of Justice is corrupt. I think high-level Secret Service is probably corrupt. That isn't to say that the people working, on the ground, most of them are heroes. Okay, look what happened in terms of the detail around President Trump. They put their bodies and they protected President Trump. Those folks are heroes. But the top of these agencies, they're political, they're partisan, and we can't trust them.
And they're corrupt, man. Shout out to Ron Johnson for saying that word. DOJ's corrupt, Secret Service probably corrupt, FBI's corrupt. It's true. They're corrupt. And that's why we have such disdain for them, because they have rigged everything. And he just started with the 2016 stuff. We didn't even get into the 2020 stuff. Add the CIA to that list there too, Ron, and then we'll have a lot more to talk about. But that was a nice assessment, and we're very grateful that we have Ron Johnson out there because, man, he is good. We have Chuck Grassley's also amazingly good. The Homeland GOP House Committee is also digging into this. They said that they went out and did a visit today, and they put out this little summary video of how that went down. This is from House Homeland GOP on X.
Lawmakers from the House.
Former President Donald Trump is safe, according to the Secret Service, after an assassination attempt on the presumptive Republican nominee in Butler, Pennsylvania.
And a group of a dozen bipartisan lawmakers from the House Homeland Security Committee did something that Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle has yet to do, and that is to visit the rally site 9 days after the assassination attempt against former President Trump.
This is Chairman Mark Green, Chairman of the Committee on Homeland Security, and I'm here at the assassination attempt site of President Trump and where that American hero was killed. We've walked the ground to get a sort of bird's eye perspective in order to go and ask the right questions of Secret Service and the individuals who actually were supposed to, had the responsibility to guard the president and failed.
We're conducting oversight over the site of the assassination attempt, which was, as everybody knows, a catastrophic failure.
Now that looks like that might be the area where Crooks climbed up onto the roof. Remember, there was some conversation about an AC unit, and if you just, let's see if they turn that corner here.
There was a failure,
but you just climb right up on there, right? You can just put your hop here, and then over here there was even something mounted on the wall that looked like it had some brackets. You could probably just climb right up there, honestly.
There was a failure in planning, a failure in execution, a failure in leadership. You know, for them not to have secured a building with a direct line of sight to the stage where the president was ultimately shot is unexcusable. And we want to get answers, and we want to figure out why.
They also were struck not only by how close that AGR building was to the...
How are these guys doing that? Oh my gosh, they're walking on this roof. They must be like gymnasts.
AGR building was to the stage, but also just how easy it was to get on top of that building.
I was on that the roof that the director said was really dangerous for Secret Service and other personnel to be on. I'm 70 years old.
What?
There's nothing unsafe.
No way.
No way.
Anytime you're investigating a crime, getting back to the beginning and understanding how it happened, what was the location, what were the tools, how was it done, those kinds of things are so important for us to understand what happened here and what questions we need to ask going forward.
And the Committee on Homeland Security is committed to get to the bottom of this. We're going to exercise every aspect of our accountability and oversight, both here in Butler, Pennsylvania today, and tomorrow and weeks ahead in Washington, D.C. Stay tuned.
All right, so good news from the GOP. They're digging into it. This woman is also from Florida. Her name is Laurel Lee. She is a representative, says the assassination on Trump the attempt could have been prevented. I saw firsthand this should have been well within the capabilities of law enforcement. My colleagues and I are working to figure out how to prevent this from happening again. You can see, man, that guy even jumped. Wow, that guy's incredible.
Well, you heard a couple of the really important things that we learned yesterday. First off, we had a chance to really walk the grounds, inspect the area, see the perimeter, and a couple of things were crystal clear. One, this was not a large area. This is a place that should have been secure, that should have been well within the capability of law enforcement to make sure that it was secure. We saw the roof. All of us had the opportunity to take a look at that roof where this shooter camped out. It was not a steep slope. That is a place, you see right there, members of Congress walking up on that roof. So it's something that clearly they could have handled. The other thing is we had the water tower, other buildings. So this is, our takeaway is that this seems like something that is just a catastrophic failure to communicate, a catastrophic failure to plan and prevent what is clearly an avoidable circumstance down there at the rally. And the other thing we got to do was talk to local law enforcement and people who were there and hear their impressions of that day and what it was like for them being there. And, you know, this has just been a horrible experience, of course, for this local community and the families who were there. So, you know, in Congress, we want to get answers about how something like this could have possibly happened, and have some accountability.
Well, you didn't.
We'll see if there is. That is a good congresswoman there digging into this. We're happy about that. Byron Donalds, we heard yesterday, eviscerate Cheadle, said that he could go to his kids and they would tell him the truth more than she did when they got in trouble. Okay. Did your dog really eat your homework? Byron Donalds' kids is like, sorry, Dad, no. Didn't actually eat the homework. Cheadle's like, no, for real, though. Like, it's gone. And actually, I can't even talk about the dog because they're with the FBI, so ask them. So here is Byron Donalds and this other fella talking about the aftermath of the assassination attempt.
Yeah, that's what was so disgusting. Simple stuff like who knew what and when did they know it, and what was the chain of communications. You don't have to give us the names of specific agents, but you can sit there and say, we were alerted at this time, and here's the flow of information as it got down to the president's core detail team, which is with him basically all the time. She couldn't even give us that level of information. And so at this point, talking about it, the only thing that we should be talking about is the fact that the American people should be ashamed, should feel shamed by this administration and by this Secret Service director, because there is no confidence in her ability to do her job going forward.
No, not at all. And of course, she has resigned now. So Byron spoke about that before that news broke, but he's right? What is happening here is no answers. She just comes in, plays the part, resigns, and that's the end of it. We're going to have some committees formed, and they'll just say the decisions have already been remedied, right? We've already made our decisions to solve this problem. Now, here is this guy, Representative Carlos Jimenez, 70 years old, and basically like a wizard or a warlock or something. I don't know how he's doing this, but we can only hope that we can be this vigorous when we're 70.
Standing at approximately beside where the shooter was, as you can see, a 70-year-old man, this roof is not a big deal. So for somebody to tell me that Secret Service agents couldn't have been here, it's crazy.
Man, it doesn't even look like it's that hot out either. Like, are you sweating? Is he gonna like have a stroke or a heart attack or something?
So you can see that got a clear line. This guy is a 70-year-old man. It's not a hard shot.
Not even a hard shot. 70-year-old dude on the roof. He must be like magical. All right, so we now know that we've got some interesting connections between people who are at least visiting the shooter's house and his workplace. We got weird trips to D.C. We have 8 shell casings now on there. A lot of stonewalling from the federal agencies. Local cops are explaining what's happening. And fortunately, we do have some Congress people who are there checking the scene out and digging into this. And so we're going to keep covering this, my friends. Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel wherever it is you're watching this, and thanks for inviting a friend or family member to come check out our channel when we go live. We'd love to have them join us, and we'd love to see you and them back here on the next one. But we're not done yet. We're still live, baby, and we got one final segment, and we're just going to poke around and see what happened on this hearing, because this was an interesting one. Local cops fighting back against the deep state, the Department of Homeland Security, Secret Service, all pointing their fingers at them. Why didn't you guys prevent Trump from getting shot in the head? Well, that's because it's not their job. You know, the Secret Service has that responsibility. And so the big question was, what did the Secret Service know? When did they know it? Where were these communications breaking down, if that even happened at all? Turns out it probably didn't. We're going to listen to a clip here from one exchange where the local cop explains that they had a person on their radio systems inside the same command center as the Secret Service. So if the local cop is getting warnings, there's a shooter on the roof from the cop sniper team, they could have relayed that instantly to the Secret Service, and the Secret Service could have taken action. Of course, we know they didn't. That's why we have a dead person, and Trump got shot in the face. So here is the chairman of this committee speaking about these failings, and then we're going to jump into some of the opening statements and see what took place as the hearing starts, because the local cops are now fighting back as they should. Here is an introduction to what went down today. The Homeland GOP chairman, his name is Mark Green, he showed up on Fox to explain a little bit about what's going on.
You mentioned talking to the Pennsylvania State Police. This is the colonel explaining communications between local police, and this is key, with Secret Service in that moment. Listen.
There was a text thread that was going, I've been briefed, between the ESU members. They identified, they took a photo of him. At some point when he utilized the rangefinder, the suspicion was heightened. So I know at a certain point in the command post, a member of PSP received a phone call and a text message from members of ESU, and I know from an interview that was immediately relayed in the command post to the Secret Service.
Immediately.
I'm like thinking text messages, phone call.
Immediately transmitted over to the Secret Service, and then what did they do? They just said, someone's going to shoot Trump. Anyways, what were we talking about? Yeah, okay, another person's going to shoot Trump. Okay, whatever. What you say? You love Kamala? Yeah, let's talk about her. So anyways, so here is...
Aren't they all coordinating on like walkie-talkies, immediate device?
No, man.
You know, exchange of information so
They're
that
playing
they
Candy
can
Crush.
respond in a split second? What did you learn from that?
This has been a problem in our entire country, getting various levels of law enforcement on the same networks like we are in the military. You know, when I was with Special Operations, these guys had satellite radios that everybody could talk to everybody. But that's not the way it is in law enforcement in the whole country, and it wasn't here. So these guys all improvised. They sent a text picture 25 minutes before the president was shot, meaning about 10 to 12 minutes before he walked on stage, saying that a guy had used a rangefinder and was this suspicious person. Now, whomever at Secret Service didn't say, hey, Mr. President, let's hold up just a little bit until we find this guy, that guy needs to be fired. Whoever was in charge in that command center and didn't make that decision, that person needs to go as well.
We don't even know who that is, right? They don't want to tell us who that is. We'll see if they actually do. But obviously, we're asking ourselves, there were multiple things that happened here. We've gone through the timeline many times. I don't need to belabor this point. But it's hard to say that every single one of these failures is just incompetence. Because when you have a pattern of things that look like incompetence, you have to ask yourself, is that intentional? Are we just kind of looking the other way and allowing stuff to go bad? There's precedent for this. This happened literally on January 6th. And if you don't want to take my word for it, read the book from Stephen Sund, because he explains exactly how every single failure went down in order to enable the attack on the Capitol. Same thing can happen here. You just don't act and bad things occur. So interesting exchange here. Let's go to the hearing. This was the gentleman who was testifying today with local police. Colonel Paris is his name. We've already heard some about him. Here is his opening statement, and then we'll poke around. I'm going to listen to the Chairman Green. We'll listen to a little bit of Benny Thompson, and then we'll jump in from there.
I would like to take this opportunity to offer our condolences on the passing of Congresswoman Lee. I would also like to take this opportunity to express our condolences to the Comparator family and offer our continued prayers to Mr. Dutch, Mr. Copenhagen, as well as former President Trump.
Amen.
As they continue to recover. I'm humbled to be here today and testify about a tragic incident which has deeply impacted the Butler community, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and our nation. I would like to dedicate my testimony here today to the approximately 6,400 women and men, civilian and enlisted in the PSP, who work tirelessly for Pennsylvania, and it is my honor to lead them. I'd like to offer a perspective that this is very much an ongoing, complex, and dynamic investigation. And each day, as we arrive at day 10 today, I learn multiple new facts as we uncover new information as the investigation progresses. I'd like to offer a point of clarification affirmatively about PSP's role. Prior to the shooting, our role was to support the Secret Service with personnel and assets that they requested.
Exactly.
Our operation plan completed to fulfill this responsibility consisted of 32 members, and we had two main responsibilities. A motorcade operation for the transportation with the Secret Service of former President Trump, as well as manning and staffing security posts inside the secure area.
Inside?
Of the Butler County Farm Show.
Got it.
Additionally, we provided 2 marked cars with uniformed troopers outside of the secure perimeter to provide roving duties, as the name implies, responding to incidents that may occur as a large gathering of people were moving to the venue. After the shooting, very early after the shooting, I had a conversation with the FBI wherein the FBI is the responsible investigating agency for the attempted assassination of a former president under federal law. The same actions that led to that also led to the homicide of 1 Pennsylvanian and the attempted homicide of 2 additional, as well as the use of force by the Secret Service counter-sniper to neutralize the threat of Mr. Crooks, thus necessitating an officer-involved shooting investigation. So the PSP currently is conducting criminal investigation parallel to and in concert with the FBI to identify any and all parties criminally culpable under Pennsylvania state law for the homicide and for the attempted homicides. And as I said, we are additionally conducting an investigation into the U.S. Secret Service counter-sniper who neutralized the threat posed by Crooks after he opened fire. I've been recently briefed about the Department of Homeland Security's commissioned after-action report. I can tell you that the Pennsylvania State Police will fully cooperate with that investigation, and it's my hope that I can answer some questions here today without sacrificing that ongoing investigation and prove to be of value to the committee. Thank you very much.
Okay, so opening statement, they were not highly involved. They were manning a couple posts. They were doing a traffic motorcade. They had some roving vehicles, not a lot of detail there. And they said that we were just responding to what the Secret Service wanted from us. They made a request. We tried to comply. And that comports with the story we read earlier this week in which the Washington Post reported this as well, that the Secret Service said, can you please put a patrol car over here? And they said, no, we can't actually. So does that mean that they had sniper teams in the second building? Let's continue and see where this goes from here. This is Chairman Mark Green now asking some questions of this state officer.
Colonel Paris, typically these events, do they typically have 2 control rooms or 2 sort of tactical operations areas where the Secret Service is in their sort of spot and the local law enforcement is in their sort of command center? Is that how it's typically done?
I would say from my experience and from state police operations, to include this event as planned in our operations plan, we had integrated communications by having our PSP personnel in the Secret Service command post.
In the same post. Our personnel were in the same post, in the same room as the Secret Service. So that's how they were integrated. One more time.
Your person is in there, where the Secret Service is in their sort of spot and the local law enforcement is in their sort of command center.
Nope.
Is that how it's typically done?
I would say from my experience and from state police operations, to include this event as planned in our operations plan.
Person was in there in that command post on this event?
Yes, sir.
Do you know if the local sheriff had anybody, or the deputies that were also providing the local guys?
I would be remiss at this point to say I knew an exact listing of everyone in that command post.
The sheriff yesterday told us he did not. Would you expect him to have had somebody there?
So I would say generally there's a lot of talk about interoperability and communications. State police, for example, operate our own statewide radio network. So we have the ability to, if we have an incident long protracted incident, for example, where we need to patch other agencies in, we have the capability to do that. However, Secret Service, for example, maintains some additional encrypted communications. So the best way to integrate unified command
is physically present in the command site.
We are.
Yeah, that's how
in there, so that we could have a radio communication as well as a redundancy in the operations plan with a telephonic backup.
Do you know if in this particular case...
So if the radios fail, they just call on cell phone or text, and that way you're just communicating face to face. No mistakes in communication. So now we have a question. Okay, who is the representative from the local cops who got notice or got the other message from the cop who fell off the building? Remember, one officer boosted another up to pull himself up, saw Crooks point the gun at him, bailed, calls it in. Immediately, the Secret Service guy in the Secret Service Command Center from the local cops hears it. Oh, hey, we just got a report, dude. There's somebody with a rifle pointing guns at my cops. Secret Service now, right? Okay, who made that conversation? Who relayed that message from the local side? And who was catching the ball from the Secret Service side? We need names.
I mean, normally they sweep these sites with dogs. Was a K9 team used here for this event?
I do not know. I have not seen the Secret Service operations plan. I've asked for it. I've yet to receive it. I did double check. That was something that PSP could typically offer to the Secret Service if they requested it. And I did verify that in this event, we did not provide any dogs.
Okay. As I understand it, there wasn't one, but you'd expect one in a situation like this.
So I want to be clear that when the Secret Service interfaces with the state police for whatever protectee and level of protection they're endeavoring to provide, the Secret Service is the lead agency. So as per the earlier statement of 18,000 law enforcement agencies across the United States, it would be very difficult, I would assert, for the Secret Service to operate all across the United States and have each individual agency telling the Secret Service how the operation should be run. They're the lead agency. If
makes sense,
that was something that their protocols called for during the initial meeting when preliminary steps and agencies were brought together, that would be something that would be discussed typically.
The AGR building, did your guys on the ground there ever voice concerns to the Secret Service for not putting somebody on that building?
So I suppose the best sequence of events that I can give you is that PSP was notified by email on July 5th about this event. There was an initial planning meeting where we had commanders present on Monday, July 8th. So over Tuesday the 9th and Wednesday the 10th, those commanders that we designated, basically our orders are from the front office, my team on down. You know, we work collaboratively with the Secret Service, collaborate, give them what we can. The final walkthrough occurred on the 11th. Present at that meeting were the two commanders that were tasked with both staffing the security checkpoints and the interior of the secure perimeter, as well as the commander who was going to be in charge of the motorcade. But in addition to that, a PSP area commander was on that walkthrough, holding the rank of major.
Could you share a little bit of insight? I appreciate the timeline, but could you share a little bit, because I only have about a minute.
I apologize.
Yeah, the specific to the AGR building.
So on that walkthrough, our area commander asked specifically who was responsible for the AGR building, and we were told that Butler ESU was responsible for that area by several Secret Service agents on that walkthrough.
Okay.
Okay.
So the Secret Service is saying that's yours. That's not our responsibility. One of the most obvious things the Secret Service should protect.
All right. One last quick question.
So the Secret Service is going to blame them, right? And he's saying they told us that. Follow-up question was, what did you say back?
Real quick, I mean, I'll let you comment about it. The slope of the roof.
Okay.
That a preventer?
Not going to ask that question.
I don't believe so, sir.
Okay. Thank you. I yield. I now recognize the ranking member for his 5 minutes question.
All right, so we have Benny Thompson who's going to come out and give us some nonsense. So here is another exchange. We're going to look at some photographs here with this gentleman.
Are you aware whether any law enforcement officer or officers was or were posted in the second floor window of the AGR building?
I am aware, yes, sir.
And what is the answer?
To my knowledge, there were 2 posted there from Butler ESU.
Wild. So Butler had snipers in that second floor, and they couldn't see the shooter on that roof crawling across the top of that roof.
Or ESU, what does the acronym ESU stand for?
Emergency Services Unit. It's a team that's comprised of multiple agencies that pool resources on a county or several county basis in order to enhance capabilities and training and be able to respond. Basically, a mutual aid agreement is my understanding.
Is it sort of like a SWAT team?
They are trained in SWAT tactics.
So how many ESU officers were posted to that second floor window?
I am aware that 2 were in the building, but again, I have not seen the Secret Service operations plan.
Do you know, well, you say in the building, were they in a window, a window out onto the sink?
From briefings that I have been given, I was told they were in a window, yes, sir.
Did they remain on post?
I was told that at a certain point, they began searching along with other local officers in the immediacy after Crooks had been identified as suspicious by them.
By them?
My understanding is that they identified Crooks for not matriculating. To my knowledge, Crooks never made it through the secure perimeter into the venue space itself. That he was identified by those members as suspicious, in part because of that. And then at some point, he produced the rangefinder, which heightened that suspicion.
So Representative Crane took a video on site yesterday. I'd like staff to put that up because it's very short. It's a few seconds. They can do that. If I understand correctly, this is from the second story window of the AGR building. You can see that window comes out from the sash and swings out to the right. There's an aerial photo right after Crooks was killed, where Crooks' body's on the roof, and that window was open. Was it from this vantage point that those ESU officers spotted Crooks?
Right. I don't know that particular window, but my understanding is from a second story window is where he was initially spotted.
Okay.
On the roof.
Are you then saying that, to your knowledge, those ESU officers left the location between the time he was spotted on the ground and identified as someone suspicious until the shooting, they had left that post to go look for him? Is that what you're saying?
My understanding is yes, along with other municipal officers that responded to that area, and that's based on interviews that we've conducted. And I want to be very clear that I don't want to establish a timeline minute by minute because we don't have that yet.
Wild.
I think that's revelatory. I haven't heard that information. I did hear before that and there's a local news station. Well, there's a local news station report from July 17 that says that local law enforcement were told they couldn't be responsible for securing the AGR building during the Trump rally. And of course, you've testified a moment ago, or earlier in this hearing, that it was your understanding from the meeting with the Secret Service on the site was that ESU was going to handle the AGR building. Which is it? Do you know?
My understanding is what my initial answer was.
Okay.
So local was going to handle the building.
You started to say something. You were saying that you did have integrated comms, and you were saying you were deferring to the ongoing investigation, but you have an understanding of the sequence. And then you're going on to another question. Do you know what you were about to say? Do you remember that?
Just that we had members of PSP inside of the Secret Service command post, and we were maintaining communication with our people.
Had ESU maintained position in that window overlooking the roof, isn't it true that they would have had a clean shot at Mr. Crooks as he was ascending the roof to his shooting position?
I'm not prepared to say that because I don't know the exact timeline of it.
But it's your understanding, though, that they were no longer in that room where they had been previously overlooking the building at the time he was ascending the roof. Is that correct?
Could you repeat that question?
The ESU officers were no longer in that room where they could look out the window and oversee the roof as that video shows.
I believe they were actively searching along with additional municipal officers for Mr. Crooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time's expired.
Interesting that they would abandon that post to go out and try to find the guy. I'm wondering if they were out of options, right? If they were communicating to the Secret Service, do we have permission to shoot? And they said, no, go apprehend them. So they said, okay, well, we're useless here in the windows, so let's go get the guy. Can we shoot? Can we shoot? What's the deal? Do you guys have sight on him? What's going on? Sounds like bedlam, but I mean, for two credentialed people to leave their assigned posts and go run around and scramble around to go try to find this guy seems absolutely strange to me. So here is Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's also here in this hearing.
Between two sides to get to the details on this, because this is poignant, very poignant. I now recognize Ms. Greene for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel Pierce, I'd like to carry the dialogue on about this specific timeline. I have a timeline that was given to us on the Oversight Committee yesterday when we questioned former Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle, as she has resigned today. Exactly what you were just discussing here. 18 minutes before President Trump took the stage, it was at 5:45 that the Butler County Emergency Services noticed Thomas Crooks on the roof, took a picture and reported it. You stated just a few minutes before in your testimony that the police or PSP were given a phone number to the Secret Service and that Butler County Emergency Services texted or sent the picture. Was that a text? Was that a digital platform? Was it an email? How did they send the picture?
Just to be clear, at that period of time, at 18:45, I don't believe the testimony was
5:45 p.m.
17:45, 5:45 p.m. Yes, ma'am. He was not up on the roof at that point. It's fine.
No. Emergency Services noticed Thomas Crooks on the roof. This is a timeline that we have. Took a picture and reported it.
They were posted in the AGR building and took a picture of him. That's what you're.
Yes. Who did they send the picture to?
Oh, I only know from interviews what I can confirm to my knowledge and belief here today that a member of Pennsylvania State Police inside of the command post received that information telephonically and by text, relayed it to the Secret Service, and then was given a number to follow up on. And that was based, again, heightened suspicion.
How did they relay it to Secret Service?
I believe that they verbally turned and said in the command post,
right,
this is information that I just received. And then in follow up to that, as directed from the interview that I was briefed on, that was forwarded by text as requested by the Secret Service.
Can you give us copies of that communication and that phone number that was given to them was for Secret Service?
That's part of the ongoing investigation, and I would defer to the legality of.
Can you find that information and provide it to our committee?
I will look to see if legally I will consult Chief Counsel within the state police, but it is an ongoing criminal investigation at this point.
So after it was reported, President Trump took the stage at 6:03 p.m. All of this took place. This was 18 minutes before President Trump actually took the stage at 6:03 p.m. President Trump was shot in the face at 6:00 p.m.
All right, y'all.
This has all been reported. These timelines. Why do you not have a timeline?
Watching the Watchers. He's on YouTube. He's on Rumble. I'm watching this on Rumble.
Obviously,
you want to hear the rest of this? I gotta install 2 computers. I may come back live when I'm heading home.
To the media.
But it's gonna be a few hours. Maybe a late drive tonight. We'll see. Thanks for hanging out, someone. I think you're the only one here.
The FBI on that. So I would refer you to the FBI,